Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Level Up podcast. I'm your host, Ken Rose, co-founder and CTO at Ops Level. Ops Level is an internal developer portal that helps engineering teams quickly ship quality software. Our Level Up podcast explores challenges, best practices, and stories from some of the brightest engineering and product leaders about what it takes to build great products, teams, and companies. And today, I am just honored to be here with Zabrina Hossain, VP of Product Management and Design at UScreen. UScreen is a video monetization platform that lets creators and entrepreneurs launch their own membership businesses to better engage with their community and their supporters. Today, UScreen has thousands of creators in their platform, millions of end users, 140 plus employees, and they recently crossed $20 million in ARR. And they did this entirely bootstrapped without taking on any venture funding. Now, prior to joining UScreen, Zabrina was also interim head of product at Carbon6, and she was as well a product leader before that at both Shopify and Wealthsimple. In addition to all that, she's also the director of APM Toronto, a group that aims to provide mentorship and training to product managers early in their careers. So, Zabrina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Ken. It's so good to see you again.
Likewise, it's been, we've known each other a few years now. How have you been? I know you were in Colombia for a short period of time. What was that like?
Yeah, we have known each other a while now. I remember our time at Shopify, the coffees we used to have. It was so fun. When you taught me about webhooks, I very distinctly remember that conversation. And then I just got back a few days ago from 3 weeks in Colombia with my family, my husband, my 2 kids. We kind of did a work-live vacation kind of thing, and it was so special. So we spent the whole time in Medellin, and I worked out of really beautiful cafes, drank really great coffee, and then on the weekends we would go tour with the kids, and it was so fun. It was so special. It's the city of eternal spring, so the weather was always good. It was really nice.
That's amazing. Yeah, my wife's family is from South Africa originally, and we've gone a few times for weddings and bar mitzvahs and other kind of events. And
yeah.
I always think could I pull this off also, the kind of 3 to 6 week, just work remote thing.
Yeah.
Time zones might be harder, but one day. I think I've romanticized about it, but I'm good for you, and congratulations on kind of, taking that time.
Thanks. Yeah, I think you can absolutely do it. Time zone will be a little tough, but you'll adjust and it'll be so fun.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, so Zabrina, I'd love to, learn, you are one of the brightest product leaders that I know, and I'd love to learn more about just, UScreen and how product development works at UScreen, and kind of the Tao of Zabrina, and how you're going to, changes you're thinking of making, or how product gets developed at UScreen to serve their customers. But why don't you just tell us first, just a little bit, tell us about UScreen, what the product does, about the company, just some good background info.
Absolutely. So I joined actually in February. So I'm just about to hit my 3-month mark, which is really exciting. Time has flown, which is when things are going well and I'm engaged. So I joined in February, and what UScreen does is it's a platform for content creators to create their websites and their mobile apps, and to use their video content to create a business. So just to kind of dive into that a little bit more, say you are a content creator on YouTube and you have great videos and you have a following of true fans that really are engaged with you and your brand and your content, but you want to make sure that you can have a sustainable business for the future as well. Because when you're on some of the social platforms, it's a rented space. You get paid what you're given through ad revenue, and that can change at any time, right? And so what UScreen is, it's a platform that simplifies the process of creating your website and your mobile apps, and that's iOS, Android, TV apps. So you can have your Apple TV, your Roku, your Fire TV, and now you have a suite of products, and then you create your membership business. So whatever you want to charge, $9.99 a month, $20 a month, and now you have an engaged platform where your true fans can access your content, and you have communities. So you have ways for your community to engage with each other. You can make posts and you can share with them, say you want to share recipes or you want to talk to them. And so it's such a fascinating, such an interesting platform. I've been so it's been so delightful as I find all these cool creators. There's tons of fitness creators, of course, because that's a great space for video content. But there's also super interesting niche spaces that I haven't heard of. There's board games, there's car racing. It's super fascinating, all the different ways that creators can share their knowledge, and then courses as well. So ways to share your knowledge, turn it into a course, and engage with a community and turn it into a business.
What I love about that also is that it sounds like creators then are kind of in control of their own destiny. They're not reliant on the centralization of a platform. It's really going back to this like decentralized model of the internet where like, no, creators have their own site and their own brand, and UScreen is the platform behind the scenes, but all the branding is for the creator, and they kind of own their communities and the engagement, and they're not reliant on the algorithm or beholden to some platform.
Exactly. And those platforms are amazing. And you should have like your audiences in multiple places, but then bringing them here where you have consistent revenue, where you're able to engage with them one-on-one on your terms is super special. And it's really empowering for these businesses. And from the time you and I spent at Shopify, you know how like passionate we both are about like helping people, helping businesses and really helping them to grow. So it really tied in with my passions there.
That's amazing. I was going to say it's like Shopify, but for video, right? Instead of for commerce. So that's amazing. Now, UScreen, you know, again, famously bootstrapped, relentlessly product focused in the past. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about how product kind of, you know, was developed at UScreen and changes you've made to how product is developed at UScreen to keep them, you know, product focused and just shipping great experiences.
Yeah. So I have to say, like, I joined UScreen because I really admire how they've built this company. So it's approximately 8 years old. It's completely bootstrapped. So they are incredibly disciplined in like how they build, how they invest, and how they grow. And then the product team was started to be developed and formally built, I think about 12 to 14 months before I joined. And our CTO, Nick, he was leading that area, and he did a really great job. He hired incredibly intelligent people, so made my job like joining the team easier because they're incredibly intelligent, great team. And then we were using the Shape Up method before I joined. So Shape Up, great framework. And
it's Basecamp's kind of famous. They have a book, and I think the book actually is free online as well. But they kind of publicize this, you know, product development framework.
Exactly, and they're using that, and they were using probably like 65% of it. And I think that's great. You don't have to kind of like dive in head first. And so they were using the pitches, they were using the shaping method, the fat marker sketches, and it was really great. When I joined, I think what I saw as an area that I could help to optimize is that all of our teams were on separate planning cadences. So someone might make a pitch and go build something, and it takes 2 weeks. Something might take 6 to 8 weeks, and everybody was kind of on different planning cadences, and it was really hard to understand where we were. And something that I've used successfully at Shopify and Wealthsimple, and where is being implemented at Carbon 6 is 6-week cycles. And it's actually a part of Shape Up. So it wasn't a major change, really. It was kind of leaning further into the Shape Up methodology. And what I love about 6-week cycles is that it's not telling you what to do. It's just giving you a planning and alignment cadence. So everybody's on this alignment cadence. Your stakeholders know exactly what we're going into. They have the opportunity to help you reprioritize. And there's ruthless prioritization because your pitches and what you're doing, like you have to know like what is the most important thing we would do. If half the team won the lottery and we couldn't do half the work that we had scheduled, what is it that we're going to do? And it becomes super simple. We know the top things, we have them ranked, and then the teams can just go and focus. You're not constantly like debating like, wait, should we do this? Should we do that? You have a certain amount of allotment for bug fixes, technical debt, fires, anything that might come up. And we just did our first cycle for that. And so that was the first big thing that I brought in, along with project briefs. We were doing pitches, and the pitches were short, simple, and they did a good job. But I think we added more detail around articulating the problem. Like, what is the problem and opportunity? Why is this a problem for our creators? And then what is the outcome we want to drive? So really becoming more outcome focused. And we aren't saying at the beginning of a cycle, this is what you have to do. This is the feature I'm delivering. It's the outcome we want to deliver. And we're really trying to give the teams the space to be creative, because I truly believe the teams are the ones like deep in there with the product and with our creators, and they're going to come up with the best solution, the best feature, how we do it. But as long as we're all aligned on the outcomes we want to drive.
I love all that. Like I was thinking about what you said. It's almost like the 50% bust factor. Like half our team won the lottery. We use a similar kind of thing. Like if every company I think knows about how much runway they have and how much longer they have in existence. The exercise I go through is similar. It's like, what if we didn't have that much runway? What if we had 3 months left to live? What would be the thing that we would build that would move the needle the most? And I think that also has been an effective framework to really force that prioritization conversation.
Wow. I really like that. I like that because I think that can be used on any team, even regardless of what framework you use, like having that tough conversation, like especially when you're weighing things, like if we only had 3 months left, like what's the thing that would like save us? Like, right. I really like that.
I find it's a good way to also inject. There's always this tension between like the long-term strategic view. Like, here's the thing we want to invest in. This is going to be a multi-year journey versus the right now, right? And what's something that can move the needle right now? And I think that can be an important forcing function to help articulate like how important are some of those strategic investments. And if we didn't do this now, what's the true impact of that?
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on, you kind of touch on some parts of the shape up method. You talked about pitches and shaping. I was wondering if you could just give a little bit more detail on like soup to nuts. What are some of those different phases that go through shape up and how are they applied at UScreen?
Yeah. So there's like the concept of the pitches. And so this is where you're articulating a problem. And so when we're bringing it into the 6-week cycle, alignment method, what I would say is around week 4 or 5, like the team leaders, the product, eng, design, and sometimes data, depending on the type of product or composition of team, they get together and they're like, okay, we have a reasonably good idea of what we know we're going to deliver. Now that should feed into what we want to build in the next cycle. We should know like what our biggest opportunities are. And that's when you start to brainstorm and ideate. And this is where we create the brief. So I've probably like massaged it a bit from the pitch in the shape up method to just getting a little bit more detailed. But our project briefs are usually about 2 pages, right? But what's really important for me is that we have the problem, the outcome, the metrics, like how are we tracking this? What is the success for the creator, our user? Why is this the most important thing we can do? And that's sometimes really hard if you don't have like the appropriate like base metrics set up, or if you're not sure how to track it. And so that's like kind of an adjustment sometimes too. And then we have like risks and tripwires, and then just a very high level scope. The scope section is actually like one of the simplest. Once you've articulated the problem and the outcomes, the scope is really like just a few bullet points in the brief around, these are the things we want to do. And these are the things we're definitely not going to do, but we're not getting too detailed in that phase, because you're going to get to that during your build phase. So once you have your briefs, your pitches, all of that ready, around week 5 is when they come and you have an alignment and planning session with your stakeholders. And so you get together and you say, hey, these are my P1s. These are the most important things. This is what I'm going to deliver no matter what. It brings the most value. And you have conviction on that because that's your team. And these are our P2s. These are the things, we have to do, soups and nuts, and the things that are kind of, or maybe things in discovery, maybe things that we're researching, figuring out. And P3s are just like, probably won't be able to do it, but say we magically have some capacity, we're gonna hit those. And that way you never have to like, oh shoot, what do we do now? Like you always have kind of like enough things planned. And then at that alignment session, that's when your stakeholders are like, you know what? I agree, or I disagree. I really want to take that P2. Like, I think that's going to move the needle for our creators. You have a discussion. Maybe there's open questions like, I need more data before I align on this. And sometimes it's like, wait, no, that all makes sense. So now once you've aligned, you're like, okay, these are our priorities. You take that back to your team, and you kick that off in week 1 of the cycle. And what I really love about how this works is that once you've kicked off, you're already aligned. Typically, you and your team have like a really good amount of time to truly focus on the work. You're not constantly reprioritizing like, wait, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? Now, don't get me wrong. At every single place I've ever been, there's always
injections or something that comes there.
The question from a stakeholder, from something like, wait, there's this thing that's come up. Can you do it? But what's really beautiful about the way this works is that those are always going to come up, and that conversation can be handled pretty simply. Like, sure, I can do that, but is this no longer important because I have to take this out? Right. And it makes it really, I've been at some places where it's an uncomfortable conversation because your stakeholder is like, no, I want both. Well, how can we do both? We've literally planned it all. We've planned it all. If you really want to move it, like what do you want to take out? I don't want to take out anything. it's really not feasible. Like you're going to have to work with me here.
You can't get water out of a stone kind of thing. Like something has to give.
Exactly. So now you have this great aligned upon list. The team knows what they're driving towards. And ideally, like all of those are at kind of different stages, and you kick off the cycle. The team has a lot of focus. They know what they're going to deliver. The next part that like is important for me in how we operate is a weekly update. So people shouldn't have to go and ask what's going on, what's happening. They know every Friday you're going to get an update on every single large initiative. It's going to come in the same simple template so that your eye can really like glance at it and get the information you need, unless you want to dive deeper. So is it red, green, or yellow? What are like the major things we accomplished and where are we going? And it's super simple. We share that transparently across the org. So that's another change that's happened since I started. So the product team was doing really great work, but not everybody knew what was happening, and things were just happening, shipping, going on. And now it's like all the information is there and it's being pushed out. So it's available to people as they need it. And it's kind of a shift. It's like people are still asking like, wait, where do I find this? Oh, it's all here. And so
you have to kind of train people. It's like, don't pull, like we're pushing, and you can self-serve now to find this information there.
Yeah, so that's been really good. And then I'll just wrap up really quickly. So we go into our build cycle, and sometimes like some of our priorities might be completely like research based, might be like a P2 is like we're building the brief for the next phase, for the next cycle rather. And then we move on into how we're going to deliver. We have weekly demos where people can sign up and share like, this is where I am, this is what I've learned, or this is what we've delivered so far. And then we are working closely throughout the process with our product marketing team to figure out like, okay, this is going to come out. So what are the things, like what tier of launch is this? And so does it need a blog post? Does it need an email? What else does it need? What segment are we going to message it to? And the PMs and product marketers are ideally working really close during like these phases as well.
I can imagine your product marketing team also loves the 6-week cadence because it gives them the lead time to start thinking about like, what's the positioning, what's the messaging, how are we going to actually launch this?
Yeah, I think so. So they actually just started using, we were just finishing up our first 6-week cycle, and they said, hey Z, can we use 6-week cycles too? I was like, you absolutely can. We've done that and it's super fun. So they're actually doing it too. And now it's gonna be a little bit like easier to understand, like this is what's being built, this is where it's going to be delivered, this is where we are on like actually developing the messaging and how we're going to do it. So I think it's going to be really cool.
Cool. I wanted to touch on one of the parts you brought up around the prioritization, right? You'd said like, okay, we get all the pitches together, we get the proposals, and then we go through this prioritization exercise. Now, in my experience, prioritization is always the hardest part because you have all these stakeholders, you have differing opinions. To your point, also, like sometimes you need to collect additional data. Like, what are some important factors that you think go into like turning this, list of stuff into something that is decorated with like P1, P2, P3?
Yeah. So that list of stuff, like, really has to be articulated as outcomes. Like, why are we building this? It's what does this do for our creator? How does it help our creator? And in turn, how does that help our business, right? Like there has to be like that full loop, and you have to be able to articulate that. And to be able to articulate that, metrics are super important. So I'll go back to that. Like, honestly, if you don't know your metrics, like you don't like know what you're building. You don't know why you're building it, right? And so metrics are incredibly important. And it's not just like I've done it. Like my metric is a binary. Like I've shipped it. Like
I shipped it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like, wait, why is this good for our creator? And not just now. Like, so like, and that's kind of like a journey, right? Like today, if we've helped our creator to increase their engagement with their end users a little bit, why is that better for them in the long term, right? Like let's tell that full story, right? If we increase their engagement, are we increasing the retention of their end users? In turn, are we keeping their business sustainable and growing? And we have to be able to tell that full narrative of why we're doing it. And so that really helps the prioritization conversation. If the pitch is, this increases engagement, like there'll be more comments. Cool. So what? Now that there's more comments, what if they're negative comments? Is that one of the risks we're talking about? Like, are we creating the right type of engagement? So ensuring that you can tell a clear and articulate story about the outcomes and follow it up with metrics makes it super easy to weigh the priorities and to be like, wait, okay, this is like a slam dunk. We really should do this one. And we had really great planning and alignment sessions for like, we just finished planning for our second cycle. And like, this is where like, cause it starts to get easier as you do a few, as you have a few under your belt. And like our stakeholders were asking lots of questions. We were super engaged. We didn't agree on all of the priorities, and that's okay. The idea idea is to align. You come in with a strong opinion, and then you learn, you clarify. And so we didn't agree on everything. We agreed on a lot of things. Some things we had to go back and clarify. Some things we pulled out altogether. Like, you know what? Not 100% bought in, but you can, let's pull this one out. Go do some more research, but these are the things we'd like to see, and then come back for the next cycle.
I really appreciate that transparency. I think, a lot of times when you read books like Shape Up, they kind of paint this majestic picture like, oh, this is the perfect product development framework. It's like, no, in practice, it's messy and there's disagreement. And the goal is like to get to that alignment. And sometimes, to your point, you have to circle the wagons, collect more data. One of the things I really like that you said is it's outcome focused, right? I've definitely been at companies, and I think early ops level was like this also, where they're feature factories. It's like, ship, get this thing out, but it's that binary. It's like, we got it out, job done. And it's like, that's not the job. The job is that outcome that you're describing. Mm-hmm.
I think that's super important, and it's easy to fall into that. And like, I've fallen into that. Like, that's what we were doing too. We're shipping, and you get such a good dopamine hit from shipping a lot of things really fast, right? But that next step, and I also don't think there's anything wrong. Like, it's just a journey. And as long as you recognize that, like, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're shipping really fast, we're shipping a lot of things, but are we shipping the best things, and do they align with a strategy, like a longer term strategy? And if you can ask yourself those questions and continuously align, I think that's great, because it's a journey. And I think you and I were joking about this, but like, it's better to be a feature factory than to not ship. There's places that are just in utter chaos and just keep circling. And they're like, should we do this? Oh, I engaged a team. Cancel, and it's too chaotic. And so the next step is like feature factory. Next step is like really strategic, outcome focused, and like aligned with the strategy to serve your users.
Nice. I want to talk a little bit about like now the kind of actual developers on the ground. So as you're in that build phase, what are some ways that you thought about like building that empathy among your development team, right? Like a challenge I've seen product engineering leaders face is like, cool, developers they have their tickets, they do the tickets, but how do you kind of prompt your developers to empathize with your end users, to basically be PMs themselves?
Yeah.
How do you kind of cultivate that?
Oh, that's such a good question. And UScreen is particularly unique because it was remote before remote was a thing. It's always been a remote first company. We're distributed across 24 countries. And so it's really easy to fall into that, like, hey, we're in all different time zones. So like, here's a ticket. And by the time I wake up, hopefully the ticket's delivered. And like that's probably like the easiest way to operate in a remote world, right? Because it's really hard to find those collaboration moments. But I think being super intentional about collaborating and finding those ways to like share context and bring people together. So for example, like our 6-week cycle planning sessions, which were with our stakeholders, and then we brought in not just the product leaders, but the design and engineering engineering leaders. And so we were all in those sessions together, and the feedback from the eng team was great. They were like, we loved hearing the feedback directly, not hearing the feedback that came and then hearing it one level removed. And so that was amazing, because I think what's going to happen over time. So firstly, they're going to take that context and share it with their teams, right? And then over time, like when they, like, say you hear feedback from your stakeholder directly as a technical leader, like, oh, like scaling in this way is really important to me, so I don't really want to do this. You may not apply it in this cycle, but now that idea has been really seeded, right? So it's going to feed into how we build in the future. So like finding those ways to like bring everyone together to like hear the information, to share their context, and bringing teams together more often. So I think it's really important to do that, like through team all hands, sharing context, what we've built, how we've served the users. So we use a tool called Gong, and it's my first time using it, but I really like it. Like I get to
Gong is the kind of like product recording or sales recording videos.
Exactly, but we record our customer service calls, we record our sales calls, and we watch them, and then we share them with the teams. Like if we come across like a particularly awesome one, we share it along with notes and encourage everyone to watch them, because like hearing it straight from the creator, like how hard it's been, like, during COVID, I had to shut down my studio, and I really needed a platform that helps me like really quickly ramp up. And so like, okay, well, we need to figure out how to do these things. You know what I mean? So just really like sharing as much and giving everyone the opportunity to interact with your user whenever possible, I think is really important.
I really love that. Like, it's kind of like hearing it from the horse's mouth. Like, the best way to build empathy is not to have it go through a filter. Like, here are the things that your users, your creators are actually saying, and making that available to everybody in your development team.
Yeah, for sure. I was
amazing.
listening to a Gong call the other day. And it was a Pilates instructor, and she has a website, and she was unsure, like, should I build apps? Like, I'm making good money, but like, do I take it to that next level? And kind of understanding her thought process of like, well, are apps daunting? Are they stressful, or is it better for my users? Like, will they actually be able to use my videos more often if I get there? So just like hearing her thought process was so fascinating to me, and I like over time we'll be able to definitely apply some of those things and concepts to how we build.
Nice. I have one other question for you about kind of the application of the shape up method at UScreen, right? This is a tension I face a lot of the time as an engineering leader, is that there's all this product work we want to do and these outcomes we want to get to. And then there's tech debt, right? There's like, hey, we took this shortcut some time ago, or here's a system that we built that was right at the time, but hasn't scaled, as we've grown as a company.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that balance of like when to invest in tech debt versus, product work, kind of the product engineering tension?
Yeah. It's a tough question as teams are growing. And so a really simple way to get started, I think, is to just pick a division, right? So I think we're having some of those debates too. And so let's just say we're going to spend 60% on innovation, 40% on tech debt. I'm just like making some stuff up. We're debating lots of numbers right now, but it's like, if we want to be innovative and we want to make sure that we have a like secure, stable, performant like platform, how do we do that, right? So I think the first step, like I try to do is like, can we just like all have a mental model? Like, okay, like let's just try to break it up. So at least we're doing a little bit of both. But over time, I think it's also making sure we're building so we're not accumulating too much tech debt. So sometimes I've seen when you're like too focused on like delivering things and delivering, if the ultimate value is like speed, and speed is good, so don't get me wrong, but if speed without quality means you're like adding more spaghetti code to the base and you're making it like more fragile in the long term. And so adding principles to the innovation side as well. So yes, we're going to do A/B tests, but we're going to do it in this way. And we're going to make sure we pull the experiments out, right? Like I've been in places where it's like, oh my God, there's all these different layers of things and they're not even in use, but we're kind of worried if we pull some of them out now that it's going to break something else. So having those principles in place so that it's kind of just like make your bed in the morning, make sure everything's tidy so you can find your stuff when you get back home, and place that on the innovation side as well.
I love that. Yeah. That's always the tension, right? It's like, to your point, like you get leverage out of not having tech debt, right? Because then you have a solid base or platform to build on.
Yeah.
At the same time, in the early days, speed, wins, right?
Yeah.
You have to always be like executing quickly. And there's that kind of constant tension that's there.
And I think one thing to remember is that it's like really good and okay to have that tension. I don't think it's going to go away because you have to be fast. Your competitors are out there, they're working and they're delivering things and they're talking to users. So you want to be fast, but you want to have quality. And so it's okay for that conversation to not go away. I think sometimes we get frustrated by it, but it's okay. Just like it's a part of the process and it will change at different points of our journey.
Yeah. Now, Zabrina, I've known you a long time. I know you have strong opinions on retrospectives. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, how retros play into the development process at UScreen and, ways that you've seen maybe retros aren't being used as effectively as they could be.
Yeah, so retros fit in really well in 6-week cycles. Like after a cycle has completed, I usually say around week 1 or 2 of the next cycle. So everything's been done, delivered. You've had a little bit of time to digest it. Book your retro for the prior cycle. And why is this super important? I think retros are so important and so underutilized. Like we all know retros are important, but then we get busy, we get stressed. We tell ourselves, we already know what was bad. Like it was generally bad, that one. We just won't do that again. But like until you bring everybody together, first of all, you give everybody a space to talk. You give them that space for psychological safety. And this is huge for culture building as well. And then you understand are there trends? And yes, this is an investment of a couple of hours, especially for the person facilitating. meeting, because afterwards they're going to pull the themes and they're going to share it out. But doing this will help a team to incrementally improve. And so back to our tech debt thing, if we're incrementally improving, we don't have to do a major overhaul. We don't have to refactor the whole base because we've been incrementally improving. And I think when you ignore retros or do them haphazardly or do them and don't use the feedback afterwards, then that's where you like start to build up a bunch of things. And over time, then later it's gonna be like, oh my God, we just have to try something new. Let's do an overhaul. And you start to wonder like what's broken. So retrospectives are incredibly important. The way we do it with 6-week cycles, or the way I prefer to do it, is that you have a retrospective for the entire team for 6-week cycles, as opposed to every initiative. That might be like just too much overhead. And in some cycles, one project might be the one that everybody wants to talk about. Like that kind of took up a lot of space. In other ones, it's just like generally like, oh, I wish we started ideating a little earlier, a little later. Like I didn't have time to focus here, or somebody kept bugging me about updates. And so it kind of varies, but that way it also consolidates and it lets everybody kind of see, because on different projects, you might not have every single person on that team, and having everybody there for that 1 hour to connect, collaborate, and communicate with each other, I think is really important.
Yeah, I a big focus for me on retros has always been this idea of like continual growth as an organization. So we had to tune the process.
Yeah.
And you brought up the point about like, if you're not using the feedback, like I've been part of organizations where it's kind of like cargo culting. Retros like, yeah, we got everyone for the hour, we talked. And then nothing else changed after the fact. Like that, you forgot the loop part of like, let's take that feedback and start to implement it. Retros are an investment in terms of making your process better. Absolutely.
And I empathize, like, you're busy, you don't want to go through all these sticky notes or these virtual sticky notes and pull out the themes in the moment. And I don't love doing that part of it, but I love the outcomes of it, right? So we just kind of have to accept like some parts of it.
Yeah, exactly. So Zabrina, I'd love to ask, you have been historically part of product organizations that have scaled a lot. You joined Shopify and it grew a lot. You joined Wealthsimple and it grew a lot. You're joining UScreen and it's, I've no doubt it's going to continue to grow. What are some changes you've kind of seen as product organizations scale?
So as product org scale, I think good product organizations really continue to focus on and like figure out how to communicate really effectively, because product teams, like you have to make sure everybody understands like, wait, the mission, where are we going? Why are we doing it? And you don't just say it once, you have to say it over and over again. So that's something that I think like really great product teams focus on. They make sure like I have like that written communication down, and written communication is sometimes uncomfortable, but especially in a remote world, it's so important. And like clear writing means clear thinking, right? Like I think sometimes as product orgs scale quickly, they might like defer to like a little bit of an oral culture. Like, okay, they told me to do this. I'm just going to go do this and I'm going to get it done really quickly, and things start to fall off the rails. But in a really strong product culture, you have that written communication so you can understand the history of decisions, the why. Everybody needs to understand why things are happening. If you understand why things are happening, it goes a lot smoother. And so if you really focus on writing things down, sharing, having good, clear meetings, like why are we coming to this meeting? Like, and make sure that there's like a lot of value for everyone involved, that everyone gets an opportunity to participate. And this for me is sometimes hard, I'll be honest, is like, I don't like quiet. And so if I've given people the space and I need to hear some things and then there's quiet, I kind of want to immediately fill that space.
Right.
But making sure,
because you have a million thoughts on the, going on and ready to jump in with.
Yeah. And I think I'm a little crazy. Like that silence makes me so uncomfortable, but I've had to learn to like live with that silence, because we need to like lots of communication and collaboration. You have to focus on that even more as you grow, because when you're smaller, you can kind of be a little bit more nimble, agile, just go do a bunch of things. But as you grow, like the cross collaboration, if one team is doing something and it negatively impacts the other, or you need help from another team, like, and you haven't communicated that well, things are just going to fall off the rails.
Yeah. It's that's amazing. I wanted to take a few minutes to also just talk about some of your work with APM and APM Toronto. So maybe actually just tell us a little bit about APM and what their mandate is. For
sure. I love talking about APM Canada. So APM Toronto was founded in 2016, I believe, and I was one of the co-founders. And it started with a bunch of people across Toronto, a bunch of product leaders getting together and being like, wait a minute, we're always competing for the same talent, because product is kind of like a hard craft to get into. Sometimes people stumble their way into it. When you hear people's like origin stories, it's like, I stumbled into it and I started doing it, right? And so it's kind of a hard craft to get into. And for those reasons, like when you have good PMs, like everyone was fighting over them. And we were just like, what if we started creating more product managers? What if like we started developing PMs, and over time we create just a bigger ecosystem of people? It's a win-win across the board, right? And so with that, APM Toronto was born, and it was like a collaborative between a number of companies in Toronto, and like a big focus on it because there are APM certifications or product certifications, but what's different here, because like just learning the theory of it makes it really hard to apply it still. Like you don't, like you really need that application part.
It's not a spectator sport. You have to do it and learn by fire.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of people stumble into it. They're actually doing it and they don't realize. And then they're like, wait, I'm a product manager, right? Right. And so what it is it's an on-the-job and learning program. So companies would commit to sponsoring an APM, hiring them, and they have that role in place while for the first 6 months, they're also learning from the program. And so the program, you're learning the theory, you're building your toolkit, you're adding all these things to your toolkit. And on the job, the company has committed to giving you the opportunities to exercise and use those tools. And so by the end of the first 6 months, the ask is that you give your APM the opportunity to stretch their muscles and like launch something, no matter how small or big, like from A to Z. And we are now, I think, in our 5th cohort, maybe our 6th. And so it's been amazing. We've graduated over 120 PMs into the ecosystem. So many have gone on to become senior. We're seeing that we're hiring between companies. So that's been great. But then we wanted to expand the mission. So a couple of years ago, we expanded to become APM Canada, where we want to take this mission further and broader and help more people. And especially in a remote world, hopefully we can expand further. So we just started our remote chapter. We have a Montreal chapter, and we are working to grow and just find more ways to support people. And our focus is truly on diversity because it's a craft that people kind of fall into. A lot of circumstances have to be like perfect for you to find your way into it, right? Which means that sometimes we've seen like historically like fewer women in the craft, fewer Indigenous people of color, and that is a huge focus for APM Canada. Like how do we make it a more diverse craft? Because we sincerely believe that the more diverse your teams are, the better the products are that you're going to build.
For sure. For sure. What do you think are some of the most important skills for budding product managers to retain?
Ooh, curiosity. So I think be super curious, ask lots of questions. I remember one of the APMs I had hired at Shopify had a business background and was feeling like kind of like nervous, like I don't know, I don't have the technical, but this person was incredibly smart and intelligent. They asked lots of questions. They partnered with the engineers, and they just like, wait, I want to understand how a database works. I want to understand how this works. I want to understand how that works. It was kind of like me being like, hey, Ken, can you explain these webhooks to me? This huge webhook project you're on. Right. So I think lead with curiosity, and that APM went on to like become incredibly like technically adept and knowing it. So I think be curious, have lots of empathy. Like your like product is a craft where you have to work across the company, and you have to have influence in a very empathetic way, right? So I've come across situations where PMs are like, I'm super busy, I don't have time to explain things. And it's like, oh, well, if people don't want to work with you, you're not going to be able to get your work done, right? So empathy is incredibly important as well. Like, why does this person, whether it's a completely different craft, partnerships, biz dev, whatever it is, what do they need and how are they contributing to this overall ecosystem? And what's super important to remember is like all of these crafts are necessary. So don't ever get like that big head of like, oh, now I work in product, so I like all. No, we really could truly not do our job without all of the other crafts combined. And so having that empathy, building those relationships, and really investing the time in honing your skills early in your career. Nice.
You mentioned, that you can't just learn the theory, you have to practice it as well. What are some of the common mistakes you've seen APMs or product managers make, when they're early in their careers?
I think one of them might be like, say you learned a theory, like one specific framework or one specific way of doing things, and that's the way I do it from now on. I think the most important thing to learn is that things change. There's better ways to build, right? Like things used to be waterfall, then agile, there's Kanban, there's this, there's that. So try lots of things, learn, continuous learning. Like I've been doing this for 14 years and I have literally never stopped learning. I love 6-week cycles now, but am I open to a new way of thinking? Like, is there potentially a better way? Maybe. And we have to be open to that. Don't get like completely invested in one way of thinking, because that means other people are going to be moving forward and you're going to be kind of like stuck in one way. So always be curious throughout your career and keep learning and keep developing yourself.
Nice. There's this analogy I remember when I was younger, I practiced martial arts and, the goal is like, oh, get to be a black belt. But then when you become a black belt, it's actually, you realize, no, that's just like a new beginning. Like you now are like level 1 of a new journey, but it's that idea like you have to be consistently learning and, honing your craft and trying new things.
For sure. Do you still practice martial arts?
I'm not as much as I should.
Is there muscle memory? Like, could you kick some ass if like you had to in the moment?
I don't know, kick ass, but like I think the problem is like there's what my brain thinks my body can do and my body physically can do. I'm in my 40s now. I'm definitely less flexible. I'd probably like throw my hip out or something like that if I tried a roundhouse.
I hear you. I'm starting to feel the knees. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I'm tired and all I've been doing is sitting. What's going on?
Yeah, and in my 20s, things break down and they get better. And now things break down and they just stay broken. And so,
I hear you.
Natural part of life, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Zabrina, before we wrap up, I always like to ask our guests, like, what's your favorite music to work to?
Ooh, such a good question. So I love deep melodic house. So house music is really beautiful. One of my favorite DJs is Lee Burridge, or Alex Cruz. He's from the Netherlands. And so like if you put on some melodic house, it's got like a good beat to it. So it doesn't make me sleepy, but it's not too fast where it gets me agitated. Somewhere like just perfect for me.
Right on. Well, I think I know what's going to be on my playlist later today then. Nice. I'm going to try some deep melodic house.
Yeah. And what about you? What do you listen to?
Oh, man. Classical, actually, sometimes. Just
I love that.
Yeah, Chopin or Beethoven. Just, it's like in the background. It's not too like there.
Yeah.
You can kind of hear like, high note every now and then. It's just very calming, right?
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah. And Zabrina, what's the best way for people to kind of keep up with you on social media?
Cool. So LinkedIn, I think I post there the most. And so you can find me, Zabrina Hossain. Also on Twitter at TechMom Diary. And so those are the two places you can definitely catch me.
Right on. Well, we're going to put links to both your LinkedIn and your Twitter in the show description below. So everybody, please feel free to follow Zabrina there. In our episode today, we talked about all things product development and product management. So Zabrina outlined for us the implementation of the shape up method at UScreen, and with a bunch of just solid insights into like how to build, fast, effective, high functioning product organization. So Zabrina, thank you again just so much for joining us on the show today. It has been just an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much for having me, Ken. It was such a fun conversation.
Yeah. And to all of our listeners, thank you again for tuning in and making it all the way to the end of the episode. If you have any topics or guests that you'd like to see on the show, please do send us an email at levelup@opslevel.com, and we will see everybody next time. Happy building. Bye.
Happy building.